HOA fined me for owning too many cars. They didn't know I owned every house on the block. The sun dipped low over Willow Creek, casting a golden haze across the manicured lawns and cookie-cutter houses of the neighborhood. To an outsider, it was paradise. Quiet streets, blooming azaleas, and a sense of order so pristine it could choke you. But to me, Ethan Caldwell, it was a battlefield disguised as suburbia. The Willow Creek Homeowners Association HOA, as everyone called it, was the self-appointed dictator of this idyllic hellscape, and I was their favorite target. It started with a letter, slipped into my mailbox like a venomous snake. Violation notice. It read in bold, accusatory font. Apparently, my 3 cars, a beat-up Chevy pickup, a sleek Tesla, and a vintage Mustang I'd been restoring in my garage, were one too many for the HOA's precious aesthetic guidelines. 2 cars per household, they decreed, as if my life could be neatly boxed into their rulebook. The fine was $500, with a warning: remove the excess vehicle within a week or face further penalties. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. They had no idea who they were dealing with. See, I wasn't just Ethan Caldwell, the guy with the messy lawn and a penchant for vintage cars. I was the shadow owner of every single house on this block. 12 homes, all mine, purchased quietly over the years through a web of LLCs and proxies. The HOA thought they were dealing with a scrappy rebel who parked his Mustang a little too close to the curb. They didn't know I held the keys to their entire kingdom. I crumpled the letter and tossed it onto my kitchen counter, already plotting. The HOA board, led by the insufferable Karen Whitaker, had been a thorn in my side since I moved in 5 years ago. Karen, with her perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a smile that could curdle milk, was the queen of petty tyranny. She'd fine me for everything: a mailbox that was non-compliant, it was half an inch too tall; grass that was unkempt, I'd missed one mowing; even a Halloween decoration she deemed too garish, it was a plastic pumpkin. But this was war. I decided to play along for now. I moved the Mustang into my garage, out of sight, and paid the fine with a check that included a smiley face in the memo line. Karen hated that kind of thing. I imagined her clutching her pearls as she read it, her lips pursing into that signature scowl. But I wasn't done. Oh no, I was just warming up. The next HOA meeting was held in the community center, a sterile box of a building with fluorescent lights and folding chairs. I showed up in my usual attire: jeans, a faded flannel, and a smirk that said I knew something they didn't. The room was filled with the usual suspects. Karen at the head of the table, flanked by her loyal minions Gary, a retired accountant who nodded at everything she said, and Linda, a busybody who carried a notebook to jot down violations like she was the neighborhood's secret police. The rest were homeowners, or so they thought, dutifully nodding along to Karen's decrees. "Mr. Caldwell," Karen said, her voice dripping with condescension as she spotted me in the back, "I trust you've addressed the vehicle issue." "Oh, absolutely," I said, leaning back in my chair. Wouldn't want to upset the delicate balance of Willow Creek's charm. Her eyes narrowed, but she moved on, launching into a tirade about mailbox uniformity and the horrors of unapproved flower beds. I tuned her out, my mind racing. The HOA didn't know that the homeowners in the room were my tenants, paying rent to my LLCs under the guise of ownership. I'd bought the houses dirt cheap during the last housing crash, turning Willow Creek into my personal fiefdom. The irony was delicious. Karen thought she ruled the block, but I was the one pulling the strings. That's when I met Ruby. She slipped into the meeting late, her sneakers squeaking on the linoleum floor. She was new, a renter in one of my properties, number 17, a cozy bungalow with a rose garden I'd never bothered to maintain. Ruby was in her late 20s, with wild red curls and a leather jacket that screamed rebellion. She didn't sit. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Name?" Karen snapped, peering over her glasses. "Ruby Martinez," she replied, her tone flat but defiant. "Just moved in. Figured I'd see what this HOA nonsense is about." Karen bristled at the word nonsense, but before she could launch into her usual spiel, Ruby cut her off. "So, what's the deal with the car thing? I've got a motorcycle in my driveway. That a problem?" The room went silent. Karen's face turned a shade of red I didn't know existed. "Motorcycles are subject to the same restrictions as cars," she said tightly. 2 vehicles per household, Miss Martinez. Ruby snorted. Good luck enforcing that. I liked her immediately. After the meeting, I caught up with Ruby outside. The night air was cool, and the streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement. You're not a fan of Karen's regime, huh? I said, falling into step beside her. She glanced at me, sizing me up. Regime's a good word for it. She's got this place on a leash. You're the guy with the cars, right? Ethan. Guilty as charged, I said, grinning. You sticking around long? Depends, she said, kicking a pebble down the sidewalk. Got a job at the community college teaching art. This place was cheap, but I'm not here for the HOA's Gestapo vibes. I laughed. You'll fit in just fine. Over the next few weeks, Ruby became my unexpected ally. She had a knack for pushing Karen's buttons, parking her motorcycle at an angle that just barely violated the HOA's aesthetic alignment rule, blasting punk rock from her porch late at night, and once, memorably, painting her mailbox bright purple. Karen was livid, sending violation notices faster than you could say community standards. But Ruby didn't care. She'd pay the fines with crumpled dollar bills and a smirk, daring Karen to escalate. I, meanwhile, was laying the groundwork for my revenge. Step 1. I started parking cars in the driveways of my other properties. A rusty VW Beetle in front of number 12. A minivan at number 8. A shiny Corvette at number 5. Each house had exactly 2 cars, per the HOA's rules, but the cumulative effect was chaos. Willow Creek looked like a used car lot, and Karen was losing her mind. Mr. Caldwell, she said, cornering me outside my house one morning, her clipboard trembling in her hands. This is unacceptable. You're encouraging this vehicular anarchy. Me? I said, feigning innocence. I'm just following the rules, Karen. 2 cars per house. Check the handbook. She stormed off, muttering about community spirit. But I wasn't done. Step 2 was more subtle. I started attending every HOA meeting, volunteering for every committee, and asking endless questions about the bylaws. I'd drag out discussions on paint colors and fence heights until Karen's eyes twitched with frustration. Ruby joined in, her sharp wit cutting through the HOA's sanctimonious nonsense like a knife. Together, we were a 2-person wrecking crew, dismantling Karen's control one petty argument at a time. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. One evening, Ruby showed up at my door, her usual swagger gone. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. "Can we talk?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I let her in, and she sank onto my couch, clutching a crumpled letter. "It's my brother," she said. "He's in trouble. Big trouble. I need to help him, but I don't have the money." I sat across from her, the weight of her words settling in. "What kind of trouble?" She hesitated, then spilled it all. Her brother, Mateo, was in prison, caught up in a drug bust that wasn't entirely his fault. He'd been trying to get clean, but the legal fees were crushing her. She'd moved to Willow Creek to start over, to save money, but the HOA's fines were bleeding her dry. "I can't keep fighting Karen and save him," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm drowning, Ethan." I didn't know what to say. I'd been so caught up in my vendetta against the HOA that I hadn't noticed the cracks in Ruby's armor. She wasn't just a rebel with a cause. She was a sister fighting for her family. It hit me hard, the kind of gut punch that makes you question everything. "Give me the letter," I said finally. She handed it over, and I scanned the details. Mateo's case was complicated, but not hopeless. I had resources, lawyers, connections, money. I could help, but doing so would mean exposing my hand, revealing that I owned the block. It would tip off Karen, ruin my plans. I looked at Ruby, her eyes searching mine for a lifeline. And in that moment, I made a choice. "Stay here," I said. "I've got an idea." The next HOA meeting was a spectacle. Karen was in rare form, railing about the car epidemic sweeping Willow Creek. She'd upped the fines, hired a tow truck company to patrol the streets, and was pushing for a new rule limiting rentals to preserve community values. The room buzzed with tension, the homeowners meet tenants shifting uncomfortably in their seats. I stood up, clearing my throat. "Karen, before you continue, I have a proposal." She sighed dramatically. "Go ahead, Mr. Caldwell." "I'd like to buy out the HOA." The room went silent. Karen's mouth dropped open, her clipboard forgotten. "Excuse me. I own every house on this block," I said, my voice steady. "All 12. I've been renting them out, and I'm tired of playing by your rules. So here's the deal. Dissolve the HOA or I'll raise the rent on every tenant until they leave. Your precious community will be a ghost town by spring." The room erupted. Gary sputtered, Linda gasped, and the tenants started whispering furiously. Karen's face was a mask of fury, but she was cornered, and she knew it. "You can't do this," she hissed. "Oh, I can," I said, sliding a folder across the table. It contained deeds, contracts, proof of ownership. "And I will." Ruby, sitting in the back, stared at me, her eyes wide. I hadn't told her my plan, hadn't warned her about the bombshell I was dropping. But as the meeting descended into chaos, I caught her gaze, and she gave me a small, grateful nod. That night, I wired money to a lawyer for Mateo's case. Ruby didn't ask how I could afford it, and I didn't tell her. Some secrets were better left unsaid. The fallout from the HOA meeting was like a wildfire tearing through Willow Creek. By morning, the news had spread. Ethan Caldwell, the scruffy guy with the Mustang, wasn't just a troublemaker, was the puppet master of the entire block. My tenants were buzzing, some thrilled at the prospect of a Karen-free future, others nervous about what my ghost town threat might mean for their leases. Karen, predictably, didn't go down without a fight. She called an emergency board meeting, rallied her loyalists, and even threatened to sue me for undermining community standards. I almost admired her tenacity. Almost. But I had bigger problems. Ruby was avoiding me. Since the meeting, she'd gone radio silent, dodging my calls and keeping her curtains drawn. I'd expected gratitude, maybe even a high five for sticking it to the HOA, but her absence gnawed at me. Had I misread her? Was she angry I'd kept my secret from her? Or was it something else entirely? I got my answer 3 days later. I was tinkering with the Mustang in my garage when Ruby's motorcycle roared into my driveway. She hopped off, helmet under her arm, her face a storm of emotions. "We need to talk," she said, her voice tight. "Thought you'd ghosted me," I said, wiping grease from my hands. "What's up?" She didn't sit, didn't relax. Just paced, her boots scuffing the concrete. "Mateo's lawyer called. The money you sent, it's more than I asked for. Way more." "Why, Ethan? What's your angle?" I leaned against the workbench, caught off guard. "No angle. You needed help? I helped. That's it." "Bull," she snapped. "Nobody drops that kind of cash without expecting something. You own the block. Fine, I get it. You're some big-shot landlord playing Robin Hood. But don't act like this is charity. What do you want from me?" Her words stung, but I saw the fear behind them. She'd been burned before, probably by people who dangled help only to yank it away. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Ruby, I don't want anything. I've got money. Yeah, but it doesn't mean much if I can't do something good with it. Mateo's your family. I know what it's like to fight for family." She stopped pacing, her eyes searching mine. "You don't talk about your family." "Not much to say," I admitted. "Lost my sister years ago. Car accident. She was all I had. If I could have done anything to save her, I would have. So when you told me about Mateo, I couldn't just sit on my hands." Her expression softened, just a fraction. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't know." "It's fine," I said, waving it off. "Point is, I'm not playing you. The HOA thing, the house it started as a game, a way to screw with Karen. But you're not part of that. You're real." She nodded slowly, like she was testing the weight of my words. "Okay," she said finally. "But don't think this makes us buddies. I still think you're a cocky bastard." I grinned. "Fair enough." For a moment, things felt lighter. Ruby and I fell into an uneasy truce. Teaming up to keep the pressure on the HOA, she'd blast her music just loud enough to annoy Linda, while I parked a rotating cast of cars, always 2 per house, in the most obnoxious spots possible. Karen's tow trucks circled like vultures, but they couldn't touch us. Every vehicle was legally parked, every fine paid on time. We were winning, and it felt good. Then Karen played her trump card. It came in the form of a certified letter, delivered by a smug courier who looked like he enjoyed his job too much. The HOA was filing a lien against my primary residence in my actual home, not one of my rentals, for repeated violations and intentional disruption of community harmony. The lien was for $10,000, with a hearing scheduled in county court. Karen had gone nuclear. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter in one hand, a beer in the other, and laughed. It was absurd, desperate, and oddly brilliant. Karen knew she couldn't win on legal grounds. Me ownership of the block gave me too much leverage, but she was banking on dragging me through the mud, costing me time and money. She wanted to make an example of me, to scare the tenants into compliance. Ruby, who'd stopped by to strategize, wasn't laughing. "This is bad, Ethan," she said, scanning the letter. "Liens are no joke. They can mess with your credit, your ability to sell." "She's not bluffing. She's overplaying her hand," I said, but doubt crept in. I'd underestimated Karen before. What if she had more up her sleeve? The hearing was a circus. The courtroom was packed with Willow Creek residents, half of them my tenants, the other half Karen's diehard supporters. Karen took the stand in a navy blazer and pearl earrings, playing the part of the aggrieved community leader. She painted me as a villain, a rogue landlord who'd exploited the neighborhood for profit, parking cars to intimidate law-abiding homeowners. It was a masterclass in crocodile tears, and the judgy, an older man with a weary expression, seemed to buy it. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Claire who'd handled my LLCs for years, tore Karen's case apart. She presented the deeds, the rental agreements, the proof that every car was within HOA rules. "My client has done nothing illegal," Claire said coolly. "The HOA's lien is a retaliatory abuse of power." The judge adjourned for deliberation, leaving us in limbo. Outside the courthouse, Karen cornered me, her smile venomous. "You think you're untouchable, Ethan, but you're not. This is my community. I'll burn it down before I let you win." I stared at her, seeing the raw, unhinged obsession in her eyes. For the first time, I wondered if I'd pushed her too far. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my porch, nursing a whiskey, replaying the day. Ruby joined me, her motorcycle helmet dangling from one hand. "You okay?" she asked, sitting beside me. "Not sure," I admitted. "This was supposed to be fun, you know? Stick it to the HOA, have a laugh. Now it's messy." She nodded, staring at the dark street. "Life's messy. You did something good for me, for Mateo. That's not nothing." "Yeah, but at what cost?" I said. "If Karen wins, she'll make life hell for everyone. If I win, I'm the guy who tanked the neighborhood. Either way, I'm the bad guy." Ruby nudged my shoulder. "You're not the bad guy. You're just human." The judge's ruling came a week later. The lien was dismissed. Claire's paperwork was ironclad, but the judge issued a stern warning about escalating tensions and urged both sides to find a compromise. Karen spun it as a victory, sending out a triumphant newsletter about upholding community values. I let her have it. I was tired of fighting. But the real blow came from Ruby. She showed up at my house with a duffel bag and a sheepish look. "I'm leaving," she said. "Mateo's case is looking better, thanks to you. He might get parole soon. I'm moving closer to him, to be there when he gets out." I felt like I'd been punched. "You're leaving? Just like that?" "Not just like that," she said, her voice soft. "This place, it's not for me. The HOA, the rules, the dramate's suffocating. I need a fresh start." I wanted to argue, to tell her to stay, but I saw the resolve in her eyes. She'd made up her mind. "What about the purple mailbox?" I said, forcing a smile. She laughed. "Leave it. Let it drive Karen nuts." The day Ruby left, Willow Creek felt emptier. Her motorcycle roared down the street one last time, and I watched until she disappeared around the corner. The block was mine, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a tomb. In the weeks that followed, I dismantled the HOA. I offered my tenants a deal: buy their houses at cost or move out with a generous severance. Most bought, grateful for the chance to own without Karen's iron fist. A few left, chasing quieter lives elsewhere. Karen fought to the end, but without a quorum, the HOA dissolved. She sold her house and moved away, her parting shot a scathing email about the death of community. I didn't reply. I kept Ruby's purple mailbox as a memento, a splash of color in a sea of beige. Mateo got parole, and Ruby sent me a postcard from Arizona, a cactus under a blazing sun. "Thanks for everything," she wrote. "Don't let the Karens win." I pinned it to my fridge, a reminder of the fight, the loss, the fleeting connection that had changed me. Now Willow Creek is quiet. Too quiet. The lawns are still manicured, the houses still neat, but the soul of the place is gone. I own the block, but I'm alone in it, surrounded by empty victories and the ghosts of battles won at too high a cost. I drive the Mustang sometimes, late at night, chasing the thrill of rebellion. But it's not the same without Ruby's motorcycle tearing up the silence. I find the HOA for their pettiness, but in the end, they find me back with loneliness, with regret, with the bitter truth that winning doesn't always mean you come out whole. What do you think? Was Ethan right to take down the HOA, or did he go too far? Was Karen the villain, or just a woman fighting for her version of order? Share your thoughts. There's no right or wrong, just the messy truth of human conflict.